Hello. Grüß Gott. Thank you for having me. This is a great honor. This is my second time in this building, and it's always a pleasure. This is also the time when I'm feeling a little bit cranky. So you're going to get a little bit of a critical view, I suppose, on what I'm doing at the moment and the field of the Internet of Things. So I sort of wrote this talk about 15 minutes ago, so it is very much influenced by both my experience this morning, listening to everyone else, but also a rehash on things that I have been talking about, among other places at the Parliament in the UK last week. So I'd like to think that I will talk about things that I wish would happen for the Internet of Things and ways in which we can interface between startups, large corporations, and capital in this new era that we're kind of walking into. What the fuck is the Internet of Things, you ask? If you ask at all. At the moment, some people can describe it as a way to design new products in ways that, have connectivity, because we have cheaper chips, we have cheaper technology, and we have ways of interacting with those technologies that are more advanced because of the internet. I also like to define it as what happens when we know what we can do on the internet and then look back at our world and look back at the products that we have. And this is big business. In Germany especially, I don't know if anybody here is from Bosch, but Bosch has been investing in the Internet of Things quite heavily, either by supporting an academic environment related to the Internet of Things and PhD programs, but also large businesses like Cisco, IBM, etc. If you look at Internet of Things and those companies and you Google that, you will find half an hour's worth of reading. And there's a lot of startups in that scene. Mine is one of them. Obviously, we're kind of all over the place, but there's quite a lot of them in the UK at the moment, and there's a few out there in the startup demo. And usually the conversation sort of hovers critically and theoretically around a couple of different areas. So people tend to talk about the technology and what we can do now with cheaper hardware, what we can do with connectivity, which type of connectivity, what is cheaper, what is more accessible, what will, IPv6 change in our lives, etc. And then we talk about privacy, we talk about standards, interoperability, oh my God, how important, etc., etc. And if you're from a telco, which I think some of you are, then you have your own M2M departments, you have your own IoT departments, you have been looking at this for a while. I tend to be interested in the things, which is the hard bit, and the bit that no one wants to look at because it's a hard bit, but it's also the bit that's interesting. Because I fundamentally think that when we talk about the Internet of Things, we do not talk about screens on garbage bins, which is what you can see in London at the moment. There's these screens around the city, which is the kind of financial district of London, and they give you all sorts of more or less useful information. Usually advertising. Now they've actually started to notice that maybe the advertising isn't that useful, so they're actually showing the state of the underground, so the underground lines in the transport system, and that's, a little bit smarter. Still, the bins are not the first place I look at when I am walking down the road. I'm usually looking at my phone, or I'm looking dead ahead because I'm trying not to get, attacked or just trying to get through the day. And this is also probably not it. If you are from the US and you have been looking at this scene, there is a tendency to look at what I would call screen-dependent products, as it were. So products that very, very heavily rely on you having a device with you. This is the third instantiation of a little startup called Green Goose, and it's called Tedo the Bear. And Tedo is a bear that allows you to play an iPad game. So when you shake the bear around, then the character on the iPad moves around and wins things. Which is sort of interesting, but also completely kills the idea of what a bear is there to do. And it also transforms the bear more into a Wii controller than it does into a bear, and takes advantage of the fact that it's a bear and it has a narrative and a history. So what is the Internet of Things? Being sort of, not really an academic, I can only point to one paper ever in any presentation. And so ages ago, in 2001, two game designers wrote a paper about slow technology. thus the title of my talk, Slow Interfaces. And they thought, okay, well, you know, this technology thing, it's just happening way too fast, and we really need to take a pause and think about what we're doing and really create technologies that you know, allow for moments of mental rest. My reply is, what a bunch of hippies, because in the average day, the average person now in 2013 will check their phone on average 40 times a day, which is absolutely terrifying, and Facebook 18 times a day. So moments of you know, mental rest is what we definitely don't have, nor do we seem to want, because otherwise we would have kind of engineered those places. There's a terrifying other paper that was written that indicates that habit formation is, you know, what is basically keeping us tethered to these devices and tethered to this technology on a daily basis. So if that first premise sounded, you know, kind of mildly interesting, it's obviously been made redundant. But I thought I would keep the bit where we talk about technology that surrounds us and technology that exists in our world that allows us to do interesting things. So never mind about the mental rest, but let's re-examine what we mean when we say technology that surrounds us. So obviously, early on, that meant projects like the Nabast tag. Who here, raise your hand if you know what a Nabast tag is? Okay, so it's a little rabbit that comes with ears that move, and it came with a telecom package. So if you signed up to France Telecom, you got a little rabbit, and then you got to decide where the other rabbit went. So you would send a little rabbit to a friend, and when you move the ears of one rabbit, the corresponding ears of the other rabbit move as well. It also came with a whole bunch of technology. It had its own app store. It was very much a early starter in this whole game of the Internet of Things. It came out on the marketplace in 2006, which is pretty early, considering there was nothing else like it. And the founder, you should look at the history of that particular company because it's fascinating. But that was things that moved. We have also things that light up. So my particular startup, Goodnight Lamp, is a family of internet-connected lamps. You have a big lamp and a little lamp. So you give the little lamps away to anyone around the world. And when you turn the big lamp on, the little ones turn on. When you turn the big lamp off, the little ones should turn off. Oh my God, yes. And so you give little lamps away to friends and family members who might be living in different time zones in different parts of the world. So you can tell them when's a good time to call, that you're available now, that you're around. If you have a grandmother living by herself, maybe she has a big lamp, you have a little lamp. So even if she's just using it to read before going to bed, then you can tell she's around, she's okay. Very, very ambient way of sharing your availability and your presence with someone. Doesn't come with a screen, has a dashboard online that you can query and you can do stuff with, but essentially kind of works by just sitting there and working. There's a little startup in London called Bleep Bleeps, which is, they describe themselves as Internet of Things parenting. And I'm really fascinated about what they mean by that, because I'm still not quite sure. But they're launching now, and they're kind of exhibiting the product now. But you can tell by the way in which it looks that it's going to be unlike anything you've ever owned in your home. And that's a really nice change to go through as consumers, to see things that you actually don't know what they do yet. You see a picture and you go, okay, well, that's not, you know, that's not an air freshener, that's not a computer per se, but I can tell that there's technology there, but they've packaged it in a way that's completely new. And that's really, really exciting for us as consumers who have seen the world in a particular way for the past 100 or so years. There's also really, really sweet things, like things that give out gum. So this was done by an ad agency in London, and this was called Molly. And Molly came with a little USB cable. You plug the USB cable into your laptop, and whenever someone retweets you, you get a little gum. So a very, very simple reward for a very mundane sort of interaction, but something cute. And they put it up on Kickstarter, and it didn't raise its funding, but that's okay. And then things that print. Who here has seen this before in another presentation somewhere? Okay, not enough of you. So this is called Little Printer, and this is by some friends of mine called Berg, and this is a microprinter that prints out publications. And you can do fun things like print out Sudoku games or the word of the day or the monster of the week. You could get it to print things at particular times to remind you of to-do lists. You could also subscribe to publications like The Guardian, so you get a mini version of The Guardian so you can read online or you can read in the bus or do something fun in the bus. completely quirky, completely lovable when you own one, which I do. It's one of those things that I put in my kitchen. I would never put, you know, anything else in my kitchen, but it feels like it belongs to that heart of the home. It belongs in a place that isn't occupied by my television or isn't occupied by my iPod dock or whatever it might be. It just has its own little space. And Berg have also started developing sort of a hacker platform as it is to try to use their cloud infrastructure. So Berg Cloud is the cloud infrastructure, and they just made this with Twitter, which is a little product called Flock, sorry. And Flock is a series of little boxes that react to things that happen on Twitter. Really, really nice, really, really fun. Made with motors. You don't see a lot of things in your home made with motors. And there's good reasons for that, but the price of a motor is really, really low. And the things that have motors in them tend to be toys. So maybe what we're talking about when we talk about the Internet of Things is also the future of toys, the future of everyday products that become more toy-like. And obviously, you know, we're not the only ones who have thought of this. Large corporations such as Walt Disney, the Walt Disney Company, have entire interactive departments. So they have been thinking about this. They've been thinking about the impact of technology on their products because they deal with what they call, in the jargon of toy design, age compression. And age compression is what happens when your kid no longer is interested in physical toys. And if you own any kid of about 9 months old, you know that they love your iPhone now. And that age compression is a real problem for them because they need to be able to play with that world and to play with things that happen online and offline. So these are one of the experiments they've been doing with 3D printing, where you can 3D print electronics. So these are standalone units that indicate the position of the pieces on a game of chess. And I'll have this online, so all the links will be there. So what's the problem? You know, okay, we have these great startups, these great ideas, things are happening, this is fantastic, aren't we great? The product and the problem is that essentially there is no space for those products out there in traditional retail spaces. And I can't really blame Minority Report, even though it's the thing to blame with every single presentation ever. But really, the idea of retail is sort of a broken model. And I'll explain why. This is an example. I'm kind of poking fun at them, and I really shouldn't because I don't know them, but still. John Lewis ran a competition. So John Lewis is a big sort of chain of very high-end products in the UK. And they ran a competition looking for innovative ideas. And by innovative ideas, you think, oh my God, maybe they've understood the Internet of Things. They've understood that there are things that are out there that are basically categoryless. Where do you put a little printer in your store? Where do you put bleep bleeps in your store? Where do you put the good night lamp in your store? It's not lighting, it's not next to a computer or printer, it's sort of anywhere in between. And no, by innovative, they meant innovative in terms of pillows and shampoos and baby strollers. So actually, you know, that world is still very much in an idea of itself that is very set, and that was set 100 or so years ago. So that's a real challenge. And online isn't much better. I take this as a personal example, and you may or may not judge me on the basis of this, but I quite like rom-coms. So Amazon actually knows that I quite like rom-coms, so suggests to me rom-coms. But I bought some lab coats for an event I was organizing 2 years ago now, and they think that in clothing, I just want to buy more lab coats. So clearly that also is sort of fucked up, excuse my French. And so where's the space where we're actually going to think about these things productively? And these are some really interesting people who have an incubator in London called Level 39. And Level 39 is based in Canary Wharf. The really interesting thing about Canary Wharf is it's an area of town that it has a lot of financial kind of sector businesses in there, a lot of banks, but also owns its own malls, which means that they can kind of do whatever they want with those malls, and they can be as innovative as they want to within a retail environment because they kind of own everything. They not only own the land, they own the buildings, they own the retail space, and they own the interaction with the public transport system. So incubators like that start to become really interesting if they actually do go beyond sort of retail technologies, as it were, and give those people working in these category-less products a chance. So we have this kind of uncanny valley in a way. You know, the Internet of Things is sort of situated between an object and what you would want your wife to buy you or your girlfriend to buy you, or you kind of make that decision, you know, for Christmas and you're kind of forced into a decision of buying something. And then you have gadgets, which you go shop in very particular places and you go and shop in a very particular way. And you might actually be using Kickstarter for most of your gadget buying because that's kind of fun too. So the Internet of Things doesn't quite know where to exist in your life right now. And I found this actually two sort of engineering terms which I quite like. Hysteresis is the dependence of a system not only in its current environment, but also in its past history. And the problem with the Internet of Things is that it's things. You have to interact with businesses that haven't changed in over 100 years because you're trying to make an object. But you have a software mindset because you've been playing online, you've been building websites, you've been building services. And so those two worlds are sort of dragging each other along. So the software side of an Internet of Things project is the most fun, is the most valuable potentially to your company, to your valuation. But you have to have a product that you have to sell in places, and you have to depend on relationships with people who don't even have websites. So that's kind of also an interesting place to be. Who knows what this unazukin is? No one, okay. Of course you do. Unazukin is this little toy. It's a Japanese toy, and you speak to it, and then it either says yes or it says no. And you can never tell when it's going to respond to you. You just kind of keep talking to it. It's this small. So you're never sure if it's working or it's not working. And so that's what we're going to encounter with the Internet of Things. You know, the light's going to come on. Does that mean, what does that mean? Oh my God, what does it mean? In the same way that people used to text message each other right in front of each other just to make sure that it had arrived. Yes, I did get your text message. Good, it did work. And so with time, we've kind of gotten over that. We can kind of expect, oh yeah, you know, that text message was stuck in the ether for a while. And we're more forgiving of those technologies that we have come to use and overuse on a daily basis. And the same will come here. But right now, we're also, you know, we're just kind of trying and testing the waters, as it were. So when I say soft interfaces, I don't mean slow. I don't mean we should slow down because, you know, the rate of progress, blah, blah, blah. I mean soft as in fuzzy. And things are going to get more and more fuzzy. The little printer will work at certain times where I've actually completely forgotten I wanted something out of it. And the goodnight lamp will work at 3 in the morning because my friend came back from, you know, getting drunk in a pub. And those things will just kind of happen because that's what life is. That is the beauty of life, that there are things that are unpredictable. And this whole work doesn't work is probably not going to apply anymore. You're just going to get a kind of buffer zone where you're going to build your awareness of what a fuzzy system looks like. And that may not even appeal to technologists and may not even be a kind of geeky type of project. For the Goodnight Lamp, for example, the people who respond the most are women between the age of 35 to 45 who have a mother who lives alone at home or a daughter going off to college. Most technologists will look at me when I explain what the Goodnight Lamp is and say, so can I get like a LCD screen and can I get multiple colors? So those reactions to technology and the simplicity of technology is probably going to not work for some people, but that's okay because it's a big world out there. Another engineering term, the wetting stage, which is in thin film technology, you talk about the wetting stage as the ability for a liquid and a solid to kind of maintain contact and start building a little bit of a bond together. And that's what I think startups and large corporations have to do with each other, because right now they're kind of figuring out how to work together again. You know, large corporations used to be small businesses a long, long time ago. And small businesses can do with the support of large organizations. And right now it's being done through incubators, and that's okay. You know, it fulfills a certain function, but there could be more, and there could be more that could be done. And the people to lead that right now are GE. So if you're interested in what GE is doing with Quirky, I suggest you Google that at some point. But that's, you know, capital is key, and there is not a lot of money out there for Internet of Things products, and there should be, and there eventually will be. But right now we're in this weird middle zone. So what to do? What to do? Oh my God, what can we do? Well, I suggest you get an Internet of Things meetup in every major city in Germany. You guys do things and make things really well, and you have a lot of telcos. So hypothetically, this should be your thing, you know? Not that I'm putting pressure on you. So the Internet of Things London meetup is a meetup that I run, and we're the biggest meetup in Europe right now. So this is my challenge to you. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. For everybody out there who has questions, there's the 2 microphones, so please, or raise your hand if you have a question. I have one. You started out by saying that the Internet of Things is so interesting also because the big companies like Bosch, IBM are involved. And then on the other hand, there is this whole range of Internet of Things products that seem to be designed, pardon to say so, but for conferences. You know, we had the Nabastag on this stage a few years ago as well, and the lovely little stories, they seem to mean something, but they seem to not go anywhere. The Nabastag is killed off, all the rabbits are dead now, and, you know, they're lovely stories, but, you know, why can it be that the big companies are really, really interested, and there's the very small out there? It cannot just be the interface.
I think it's a question of time. The Nabastag was obviously one of its, you know, there was the Nabastag and Ambient Devices, who were 2 companies around 2005, 2006. We've gone from 2 to, on average in the world now, considering at the last Internet of Things meetup, we had 20 people exhibiting, or 20 projects exhibited. I would say, you know, let's say 150 to 200 companies, considering everyone on Kickstarter and all those kinds of companies. I think it's a matter of time.
And those are the people looking at the things and of
yes,
the
yes,
the
and these are
spectrum,
people making things. These are people looking for a link to retail, looking for that exposure to customers, for a customer to go, yes, I would like to pre-order this. And that is happening now at a scale that it wasn't back then, when it was just the 1 or 2 companies. I think it's kind of like saying, I don't know, you know, this radioactive or this microwave thing, I don't know about that. Yeah, it was a technology that was developed during the war, and it took until the 80s before 90% of the population had a microwave in their home. So sometimes things just take time, and hardware is hard, so it just takes more time.
Since you have a pretty good overview of all the kind of services and products being developed, which one do you think will be in a lot of households the first? I mean, what is the one that people will just go for?
That's kind of easy, but also I don't want to reply.
The good night lamp, maybe, but
I think whoever can really work with retail. I think that's the key thing, because people don't buy one of something just randomly. They buy one of something because they've seen it for about 6 to 8 months in magazines and newspapers, and then when comes Christmas time, they'll go, oh, I've seen this thing. And so it's whoever has the most patience, I think. It really is a game, it's the long game, and it's just a game of being constantly there in people's minds and constantly extremely patient. I hope we can be it, but
so
I know other
how do you
people
go
who
about
are,
it with the good night lamp? Are you trying to convince one retail store? Or?
We have 10 distributors interested in the product, and we have over 200 pre-orders right now. So this is...
Something's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Here the audience for questions here. I can't see you very well, so... Nobody?
Crickets.
All convinced the Internet of Things is going to come, but we don't know when and where the audience will buy into it. Well, thank you very much for your
Thank you for having me.